Every day, people vanish without a trace. Sometimes it's a tragic accident, sometimes a cruel twist of fate. But most often, it's the loved ones who continue searching long after everyone else has given up. Their determination keeps hope alive. But what if the very people you trusted the most, your wife, your best friend, were involved in your disappearance? What if behind the tears and grief lies cold calculation and the lure of profit? When everything is staged perfectly, who keeps looking once the evidence fades? Perhaps only a mother can keep fighting for the truth when the rest of the world has moved on. On December 16th, 31-year-old Jerry Michael Williams went on a hunting trip in Florida and mysteriously vanished. Many believed it was a tragic accident and the case was closed far too quickly. But 18 years later, the truth finally came to light. This wasn't just a disappearance. Those closest to him, his wife and best friend, may have been behind it all. And you might wonder, what does life insurance have to do with it? This story shook America once again in 2025, sparking massive public attention. As a result, the streaming platform Hulu is set to release a 4-part documentary series on July 30th, aiming to uncover the truth that remained hidden for nearly 2 decades. To most people, Jerry Michael Williams, known simply as Mike, seemed to be living the dream. He had a loving wife and child, a lucrative real estate career that afforded them a beautiful house and a tight-knit group of friends. But Mike's success wasn't handed to him. He was raised in modest circumstances. His dad drove a bus, his mom cared for kids in a daycare, and the family lived in a trailer. Determined to give their children a better future, his parents scraped together enough to send both Mike and his brother Nick to North Florida Christian High School. Mike was a standout student, not just academically, but in character as well. While juggling his classes, he also took on night shifts at a local convenience store to help ease his parents' financial burden. Friends remembered him as someone people naturally gravitated toward. His kindness was genuine and unforced. Mike often took on the role of a big brother, even to those outside his family. If he saw someone being mistreated, he didn't hesitate to step in. "He always stood up for me," one friend recalled. During his teenage years, Mike began dating fellow student Denise Merrill. He was a football player, she was a cheerleader. They also shared responsibilities on the student council, forming a close bond early on. Around this same time, Mike crossed paths with Brian Winchester, who quickly became his best friend. The two couples, Mike and Denise, Brian and his girlfriend Kathy, formed a tight-knit social group. It was also during high school that Mike found a passion that would stay with him for life: duck hunting. According to his mother, Cheryl, Mike had adored the outdoors since childhood and loved going hunting with his dad ever since he was about 6 years old. All four, Mike, Denise, Brian, and Kathy, graduated high school in 1988. Years later, in 1994, both couples tied the knot, remaining as close as ever. Denise pursued a career in accounting, Mike found his path in real estate, while Brian started selling insurance. Mike's tireless work ethic carried into his adult life. He was the kind of person who never slowed down. He routinely worked 14 to 16-hour days, arriving at the office before sunrise and sometimes only stopping by home for a quick dinner before returning to work. His boss once described him as the most dedicated employee he'd ever seen, even admitting that he had to take Mike's office keys just to prevent him from coming in on weekends. In 1999, Mike and Denise welcomed a baby girl named Ansley.
Just totally overwhelmed. She was due Tuesday, and she would have made me wait a whole nother year for Mother's Day, so she came yesterday so I could enjoy this day today with her.
It was unbelievable. I have a whole new respect for my wife and women in general and what they go through to bring a new child, new life into the world.
The family had settled into a modest yet upscale neighborhood. The passing of Mike's father deeply affected him, making him cherish every moment with his daughter even more. In the wake of that loss, Mike and Denise secured a $1.5 million life insurance policy on Mike, arranged by none other than Brian. Later, they added 2 more policies, bringing the total coverage close to $2 million. Mike explained that after experiencing his father's death, he wanted to be certain that his family would be financially secure if anything ever happened to him. On Thursday, December 14, 2000, Mike had been spending considerable time with his mother, offering her emotional support following the recent loss of his father. That day, he and Denise shared some joyful news with Cheryl and his brother Nick. They were hoping to expand their family soon. Mike was excited about the idea of giving little Ansley a sibling. Having a big, loving family had always been one of his dreams. The couple were also planning a cruise and eagerly anticipating their upcoming 6th wedding anniversary, which they planned to celebrate in just a few days. In the early hours of Saturday, December 16, 2000, Mike loaded up his duck hunting gear, hooked his boat to the back of his truck, and headed out toward Lake Seminole, roughly an hour away. This wasn't unusual. He often made these early morning trips to one of his favorite hunting spots. By noon, however, he still hadn't returned home. Concerned, Denise phoned her father. That day marked the couple's 6th wedding anniversary, and they had special plans to celebrate, so Mike's absence was especially alarming. Denise's father and Brian Winchester decided to go out to the lake to search for him. Although Lake Seminole stretches roughly 35 miles, Brian suggested they begin checking the specific spots Mike frequented. Roughly 12 hours later, around 2:30 a.m., searchers located Mike's Ford Bronco parked near a secluded boat ramp. Not long after, they found his boat drifting in the murky, shallow waters nearby. Inside, investigators discovered his shotgun and 2 life jackets. The engine was off, but the fuel tank was still full, yet Mike was nowhere to be seen. A helicopter was brought in, and divers began combing the area. Unfortunately, their efforts were hampered by severe weather conditions and freezing temperatures. As days passed with no sign of Mike, hope began to fade. Authorities leaned toward the theory that this was nothing more than a tragic boating mishap. They speculated that Mike's boat had struck a submerged tree stump, causing him to fall overboard. With his waders quickly filling with water, he likely drowned. As for why his body hadn't surfaced, investigators theorized he had been consumed by alligators. Mike's close friend and frequent hunting companion, Brian Winchester, reluctantly agreed with the theory that Mike had drowned and been eaten by alligators. However, Cheryl, Mike's mother, wasn't convinced. Determined to understand the truth, she consulted a wildlife expert about the alligator theory. The specialist explained that alligators usually stop feeding when water temperatures drop too low. He also stated that if alligators had attacked Mike, it would be nearly impossible for there to be no trace left. No remains, no clothing, nothing. The theory simply didn't hold up under scrutiny. Over the course of 44 days, search crews logged more than 700 man-hours combing the area. But they found absolutely nothing. No signs, no clues, not even a shred of evidence. Eventually, after 6 months of fruitless searching, the operation was officially halted. Then everything took a strange turn. A hat was discovered floating on the water's surface. Soon after, a pair of waders surfaced, followed by a flashlight, a red hunting jacket, and Mike Williams' hunting license. What shocked investigators was the pristine condition of the items. The license was still readable, the flashlight still worked, and there were no marks or damage one might expect if an alligator had been involved. It made no sense. How could these items survive untouched in swamp water for half a year? Everyone was stunned that, after weeks of intensive searching, the items suddenly surfaced as if they had been there all along. Officer David Arnett immediately found the situation suspicious. He pointed out that Mike's truck was discovered at a remote and undeveloped boat launch, meaning Mike would have had to haul his boat through thick mud just to reach the water. Additionally, based on the weather conditions that day, particularly the intense storm, the boat should have drifted toward the eastern shoreline. Yet strangely, it was located on the western shore, firmly within Florida territory. Typically, when someone goes missing, the law requires a 5-year waiting period before they can officially be declared dead. However, only 6 months after Mike vanished, Denise filed for a death certificate. As a result, Mike Williams was formally declared deceased, with the cause listed as accidental drowning. Cheryl, Mike's mother, had no knowledge that this had taken place and strongly refused to accept that her son was truly gone. Cheryl had no idea that Mike had already been declared dead and couldn't accept it when she found out, but Denise was firm in her stance. According to Cheryl, Denise warned her that if she tried to push for a criminal investigation, she would be cut off from seeing her granddaughter. Friends of the Williams family said Denise quickly distanced herself from Mike's relatives and severed communication between them and her daughter. However, Denise's friends claim she spent a lot of time telling her daughter about Mike and how wonderful he was. For Cheryl, who had already lost her husband and son, the thought of also losing her granddaughter was unbearable. But her need for the truth outweighed the fear. In 2005, she pushed forward and the case was reopened. People in the community, and especially those who had followed Mike's disappearance from the beginning, were buzzing with chatter. Denise Williams had married Brian Winchester. While many were stunned by the news, others weren't surprised at all. Whispers of a long-running affair between the two had circulated for years, and Brian's split from his wife Kathy, followed by his engagement to Denise, only seemed to confirm the suspicions. Brian's ex-wife Kathy later confirmed the rumors, saying she had suspected for a long time that something inappropriate was happening between Brian and Denise. A year later, Mike's story resurfaced in the media. Jennifer Portman, the news director at the Tallahassee Democrat, came across a submission from Cheryl. After reading through it, she immediately sensed something wasn't right and believed the case deserved far more public attention. She began publishing a series of in-depth articles on Mike's disappearance, chronicling every detail and aiming to reignite public interest. In 2008, authorities officially stated they were now treating the case as a potential criminal investigation. As time continued to pass with no sign of Mike, Cheryl never gave up. In 2011, she organized a small vigil for her son, just herself, holding a few signs and pacing up and down the street in his memory. Behind the scenes, however, law enforcement had quietly begun building a case. They were investigating both Brian and Denise for possible insurance fraud, tied to the large payouts they received after Mike was declared deceased. Around this time, a new witness came forward claiming to have seen Brian at Lake Seminole on the morning Mike vanished. When shown a photo lineup, the witness pointed to Brian and said, "That's him." As the insurance investigation progressed, the relationship between Denise and Brian Winchester began to unravel. They separated in 2012 and finalized their divorce by 2016. Things quickly turned bitter between them, and Brian's behavior took a dark turn. He broke into Denise's vehicle, and when she got inside, held her at gunpoint. As soon as Brian fled the scene, Denise immediately contacted the authorities and accused him of armed kidnapping.
We're almost in the 4th year of our separation and divorce. Another divorce date is looming Wednesday. I'll just tell you about what happened today. Okay. So I go out to my car to go to work. I work at FSU. I was calling my sister, and this person starts climbing out of the very back, and I couldn't tell at first who it was, but then immediately I knew who it was, but I was screaming. He, was up and grabbing me, and he pulled my face pretty hard, and he goes, he's cussing, you will turn here, you will turn here, and he pulled out a gun, like a gun, not a hunting gun, but like a gun that you would kill someone with, and he put it right here in my ribs. So he was in the back, I guess, hiding, and then when he came out, he came up to right behind me. So like I'm driving, and he's right here. So the gun stayed there the whole time. He finally had let go of the seat, so I was still buckled in, but I was turning, and I was like, what do you want to talk about? So then he was like, you won't answer my text, I had to do this because you won't answer my text or my calls. Please just call the divorce off. I've lost everything, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up, we were probably there, for like, it felt, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. So if their cameras do work, they'll see the whole thing. I would cry some and cry not. It was raining, people would come and go. But I ended up, of course, at the beginning, especially, he was crazed. And then as we were talking, I was just kind of agreeing with whatever he was saying. And I was like, I know that you love me, and he's recently lost his son. His son has decided to move in he had joint custody and now he doesn't. And so he said, I've lost my son, I lost you, I have nothing to live for. And I was like, well, Brian, you're the only one who can change. So I just kept saying, you've got to stop living that way. You've got, you could get us all back if you'll just turn your life around, because he was a Christian at one point. And I was like, if you'll just turn back to the Lord. So the whole time I'm turned this way, I'm buckled in, but he's calm, he's calming down. And so, but the gun's still right there, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And he's like, what am I doing? I could tell he was, and I was like, I don't know. I know you want to talk to me, but this is not the way to do it. I know. What have I done? It's like he kind of woke up.
We'll do the injunction. That's the first step, I think. It's a restraining order.
Okay.
It's going to keep him from, if he calls you, once you submit that paperwork, that's a violation.
Okay.
And we're going to follow up on that, okay? So we'll do what we can. It's, a lot of times people think that, it's just a piece of paper. Is it really going to protect me? But it really can work to protect you. And I suggest that I think we should go there. Like I said, we'll have to do certain things here.
Yeah.
It does. It really will work to protect you.
The officer noticed the growing tension between Denise and Brian and saw an opportunity. Using their fractured relationship as leverage, he carefully steered the conversation toward a case that had long gone cold: the disappearance of Mike Williams.
That is the truth. I've been doing this too long. I've talked to everybody I know over the years for 15 years about how and what we could do. 15 years ago, he walked in and told you he'd done something. Didn't he?
No.
Denise,
No.
you have got, this is not going away. He's going to try and stop people from talking about what he did.
I never had any reason to believe that he would do that. He loves the Lord. He was a Christian. That's why I married him. He was doing prison ministry. I was doing prison ministry. Even after everything that he said to me today, I do not believe, no, I don't. And I don't believe he was there to hurt me.
He killed Mike, and he did it for you because he wanted you. And I know that's hard, and I know it hurts. But by God, I'm telling you, that's what happened. How old was Ainsley then?
Baby.
Huh?
A baby.
Not even a year. He didn't care. He killed your husband.
But if he is nuts, that crazy, then again, I can't have an officer live with me 24/7.
He killed Mike. And he buried Mike where no one could ever find him. That is the truth. I'm wondering if you're thinking to the same place today that he buried Mike, because he's done it before. You have to wrap your mind around it, Denise. That is what he has done, and he's willing to do it again.
Now I'm just starting to feel very uncomfortable.
Okay.
But
Well, I've been uncomfortable for a long time because we needed some things on this case.
right.
And we were hoping one day that either Brian or you maybe could fill in some of the gaps there, fill in a piece of the puzzle.
Right. But I guess right now I need to focus on this and what happened this morning, and I want to get this restraining order done by 5 o'clock. And I want me and my daughter to be safe, and that's what I'm focused on.
There's no doubt that Brian's going to be located and put in jail. What if he starts talking about the past, way in the past?
Then he might. I don't know. I have no idea what he's going to say.
Yeah, no idea.
No.
What if he starts talking about? What if he starts talking about the
it.
disappearance of Mike?
I hope he admits this morning. I hope he admits what he did. If they ask him about Mike, I have no idea. I mean, we'll see.
The real reason Brian got into Denise's car and the disturbing exchange that followed would soon be revealed. After 16 years of secrecy and silence, the truth about Mike Williams' disappearance was finally breaking through.
We're here in the state of Florida versus Brian Winchester.
My client would like to address the court.
Certainly.
Never, ever did I have any intentions of harming Denise, nor would I. Nonetheless, I do know that she was hurt by my actions, and again, I am truly sorry.
I start each day with the memory of him jumping out of the back, and I end each day feeling the gun shoved in my ribs when I turn on my right side trying to sleep. He will finish what he has started. I'm asking you to sentence him to life in prison for the crimes he has committed. It comes down to my life or his, and I'm asking you, please, to choose mine. Thank you.
As Brian Winchester faced trial, prosecutors gave him a choice. Tell the truth about what happened to Mike Williams, and in return, they'd cut him a deal. Full immunity for anything he revealed, and a reduced sentence of just 20 years behind bars. Brian took the offer and finally began to talk. He admitted the unthinkable. The affair with Denise had begun back in 1997. Over time, their secret relationship had evolved into something far more sinister. Together, they came up with a plan: kill Mike, make it look like an accident, claim his life insurance money, and, in Brian's words, live happily ever after. Brian also claimed Denise wanted Mike gone while their daughter was still young enough not to remember him. Looking back, Brian called himself a stupid 30-year-old, saying he didn't even realize how deeply he'd been manipulated. The original date they picked for the murder was December 9th, 2000. Brian was supposed to take Mike duck hunting, shove him overboard, and act like it had been a terrible accident. But on the morning of the 9th, Denise called Brian and told him not to go through with it. Brian later admitted feeling a wave of relief, but also confusion. For weeks, they had talked through every detail. And now, when the moment had finally arrived, she backed out. Was she afraid? Or was she starting to have doubts about Brian himself? Either way, the plan was temporarily off, but not for long. But not long after canceling the plan, Denise changed her mind again. December 16th was now the new date. According to Brian, it was all set to play out just like any other duck hunting trip. Early morning, quiet lake, two old friends heading out in the boat. But beneath the surface, something much darker was brewing. They had carefully crafted a plan. Mike would be wearing waders, the kind that fill with water instantly if someone falls in. The idea was simple: push him overboard, let nature do the rest. Waders were their alibi, their guarantee. In cold winter waters, even a strong swimmer wouldn't stand a chance. The perfect accident. Or so they thought. They headed out just like they always did. Two friends, a boat, a cold December morning. When they reached the spot, the same spot where Mike's waders and jacket would later be found, Brian asked Mike to stand, and then he shoved him into the freezing water. But things didn't go as planned. Mike, fighting for his life, managed to wriggle out of the heavy waders. He even got his jacket off. He wasn't drowning. That's when Brian panicked. In the chaos, with Mike trying to get back in the boat or swim to shore, Brian grabbed his shotgun and pulled the trigger. After shooting Mike, Brian dragged his lifeless body to the shore. In the early morning stillness, he hoisted him into the back of his car. Then, in a calculated move, he pushed the boat back onto the water, staging the perfect disappearance. With Mike's body hidden in his trunk, Brian returned home. He slipped back into bed beside his sleeping wife, Kathy, like nothing had ever happened. Later that day, he drove to a local Walmart and bought a shovel. No one questioned it. No one knew what it was for. Brian then made his way to a remote, secluded spot and buried Mike's body, deep enough that it would remain hidden for years. As the years passed, Brian claimed Denise rarely spoke about Mike. It was as if he never existed, as if erasing him from memory could erase what they had done. But their relationship wasn't built to last. Once full of secret glances and whispered promises, it soon turned cold and bitter. Brian became paranoid. He feared Denise might turn him in, that she would betray him to save herself. And that fear consumed him. The day he held her at gunpoint in the car, Brian later said it wasn't about love or jealousy. It was about control. He made her swear to never speak a word about what happened to Mike, to carry the secret with her to the grave. Just one day after his confession, Brian finally told investigators where to find Mike's remains. It was the end of Gardner Road in northern Leon County, a place desolate, forgotten, and eerily quiet. A patch of wilderness surrounded by silence. only 5 miles from where Mike had grown up, and where his mother still lived, praying for answers. He'd been there all along, buried in the cold, unforgiving dirt by the man he once called a friend.
Good afternoon. I'm Special Agent in Charge Mark Perez with the Tallahassee Regional Operations Center. After years of interviews, forensic and investigative analysis, we finally got the break that we needed. Standing here now, I can tell you that we know what happened to Mike Williams. He was murdered. After receiving new information, FDLE's crime scene unit and special agents spent days conducting an extensive search at an undisclosed location. That search led to the recovery of human remains, and FDLE's crime laboratory analysts confirmed through DNA analysis that the human remains are those of Mike Williams. Now that we have recovered the remains of Mike Williams and have additional forensic evidence, our focus has shifted to bringing those responsible for his death to justice. And we will not stop till that is done.
5 months later, authorities walked into Denise Winchester's office. Right then and there, she was placed under arrest. It was Ansley's 19th birthday. The woman who had once played the grieving widow was now indicted on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and accessory after the fact. After nearly 2 decades of secrets, silence, and suspicion, the truth was finally catching up.
First appearance? Okay. Good morning. Would you tell us your name, please?
Denise Williams.
All right. Good morning, Miss Williams. Miss Williams, as if you're not aware, but I'm sure Mr. Way has informed you, there was an indictment for conspiracy to commit murder first degree, murder of the first degree, and accessory after the fact for murder first degree. These are all punishable by life offenses. For right now, however, I am going to hold you no bond. Mr. Fuchs, what's the state's recommendation as to condition? Anything else that I need to do on
No,
the
Your Honor,
case?
she's being held without bond, so
Okay.
there's nothing further to be done.
All right. Miss Williams, did you have any questions about anything?
No.
All right. That will conclude your first appearance.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Denise's defense team argued that Brian Winchester was acting out of bitterness as a rejected former husband. They claimed that due to the immunity deal he had secured, he was in a position to fabricate his testimony without facing any real legal consequences. Brian, who was being held without the possibility of bail, was already serving a 20-year sentence. To the defense, this seemed like an unreasonably light punishment for someone involved in a homicide. They asserted that the entire case against Denise was based on Brian's questionable statements, which they considered more fictional than factual. The legal team emphasized that there's a significant difference between cooperating with authorities and constructing a false narrative. During the trial, testimonies were given by Brian himself, Cheryl, Mike's mother, and Brian's ex-wife, Kathy. Evidence revealed that over time, Brian and Denise had grown emotionally closer while simultaneously distancing themselves from their spouses. Their growing bond was accompanied by ongoing dissatisfaction and complaints about their respective partners, Mike and Kathy. Denise, influenced by her upbringing and personal pride, was firmly against the idea of divorce, openly stating that ending her marriage was not an option. Despite this, she still wanted to pursue a relationship with Brian, which significantly limited the possible paths they could take. Brian acknowledged that the situation wasn't solely driven by Denise. He admitted he played a major role in initiating many of their plans and took responsibility for much of the decision-making. Their efforts to find a way to be together were mutual and persistent. In the 18 months leading up to Mike's disappearance, the pair regularly discussed various scenarios and strategies that would allow them to continue their relationship without interference. After 3 days of testimony and presentation of evidence, the case was handed over to the jury for deliberation. Once they were ready, court proceedings resumed.
We ready for a jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, let's have a jury, please.
State of Florida versus Denise Williams. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment the defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. As to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. We, the jury, find as follows: as to count 3 of the indictment, the defendant is guilty of accessory after the fact of first-degree murder. It's been dated and signed by the foreperson. Ms. Eidlet, did I accurately reflect the verdict of the jury?
In February 2019, Denise Williams received a life sentence. During the court proceedings, Mike's mother described her long and painful journey to uncover the truth. For 17 years, she had dedicated her life to finding her son, making endless phone calls, putting up missing person flyers, collecting her thoughts and records into a book, and organizing social media campaigns. With support from friends, she raised funds for billboards and purchased newspaper ads in the Tallahassee Democrat and Twin City News, pleading for public help in locating Mike. Despite her efforts, authorities told her early on that Mike had likely drowned and been eaten by alligators, dismissing her pleas and even mocking her as delusional. She rejected this narrative and stood firm in her belief that something more sinister had occurred. She emphasized that she was not a victim, but a fighter, driven by love for her son. Although she cared for her granddaughter Ansley, Mike remained her child, and her determination to learn the truth only grew stronger with time. She expressed how no handbook exists to guide a mother whose child has vanished. She simply followed the directions she believed God had placed in her heart. Even now, when she tries to sleep, she is haunted by visions of Mike struggling alone in the dark, clinging to hope, only to realize that the person he trusted most was trying to end his life. Denise's legal team promptly filed an appeal against the conviction. The appellate judges sided with her attorneys and in 2020 overturned the murder charge. They ruled that the prosecution had not sufficiently proven that Denise was a principal actor in the crime. Despite this, her conviction for conspiracy to commit murder remained intact, and she was given a new sentence. Both Denise and Cheryl made statements during the resentencing hearing. Ultimately, Denise received a 30-year sentence and must serve at least 85% of it before becoming eligible for parole. Meanwhile, Brian Winchester's parole eligibility is set for 2034, when he will be 63 years old. A memorial service for Mike was finally organized, and Cheryl expressed her wish for everyone to attend, including family and friends from both Denise's and Brian's sides. Each year, Cheryl places a small newspaper advertisement on her granddaughter Ansley's birthday, hoping Ansley might see it and make contact, despite never receiving a response. Having lost her father at just 18 months old, Ansley has also essentially been without her mother's presence. Ansley maintains her belief in her mother's innocence, firmly stating that there is no possibility her mother conspired with Brian to murder her father. She believes Brian acted alone, without her mother's involvement. Cheryl Williams is an extraordinary woman who never stopped searching for the truth about her son's fate. Over the years, she gathered 27 pages filled with detailed notes and evidence, and she sent daily letters to the governor of Florida for 9 consecutive years. She made a firm promise to herself that she would not rest until her pleas were acknowledged and taken seriously. Mike Williams was known as a compassionate and diligent man, deeply devoted to his family. His life ended tragically and shockingly, and although it took nearly 2 decades to see justice served, his loved ones persevered to ensure it finally happened. This story is a chilling reminder of what greed and betrayal are capable of, and that those who betray you can be the closest people you least expect. Mike Williams was betrayed by his wife and best friend for a $1.5 million insurance payout. Only his mother never gave up trying to uncover the truth and fought for justice for nearly 20 years.